coming up next, I think we'll get stuck in, and Jim Duprinsky, I call him Uncle Jim because he's older and wiser than me. Um, but he's been in the profession for 40 years. I can say I've been in it for 35, so he beats me by a few. Um, but he's done a lot of different things, and he's an Oracle ACE director since 2014. He presents everywhere. If you go to an event somewhere, you'll usually come across Uncle Jim sharing something, some sort of pearls of wisdom. And he's not only is he's actually unusual in that he's total tech geek, but he has an incredible sense of humor. So anyway, fun fact about Jim: he really enjoys map technology so much, and that's why is because when he was a child, his dad would get horribly lost wherever he drove the family anywhere, and Jim became the navigator. So you never know; those horrible car experiences sometimes have good benefits. So, without further ado, Jim, if I can hand over to you, sir. It's great to have you again. Real pleasure to be sharing a screen with you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roger. That was a nice introduction. I really appreciate it. Let me just get my screen shared. So, good morning, everyone. I'm fresh off of 2 days of presenting at the Utah Oracle User Group event that we just had yesterday and Monday, which was marvelous. We packed it with all kinds of great content, but I didn't get to talk about one of my favorite things, as Roger alluded, which is maps, geolocation, GIS, all that kind of cool stuff. So, to tell you a little bit more about myself, if I can move some of my stuff on the side here so I can get it out of the way. There we go. Most days now, I hate to say I'm retired. I tell people I'm on sabbatical, which sounds a lot better. You retire horses, right? You don't retire people. I spend a lot of my time between Illinois and Wisconsin. I'm right on the Mississippi Flyway, which is an enormous migration chain for birds and all kinds of wildlife. So I've become an amateur bird watcher as well. That's actually from Ecuador when I was in the cloud forest. I'm also not a lifetime athlete, as you can see from these pictures. I, for some reason, 4 years ago, decided to start taking martial arts, and I regularly get my butt kicked by the oldest person in our class, which happens to be my wife, which makes for some interesting discussions at dinner. But you'll find me on Twitter a lot. If you have questions after this presentation, if you want to hit me on the ANDOUC Slack channel, or ping me on LinkedIn, or at this email address, jim@jimthewhyguy, feel free to. I'm also, as Gene and Roger alluded to, I'm an Oracle ACE director. What does that mean? Well, if you come to a major conference, you'll find an ACE director at the end of the bar at 1 a.m., usually working on their presentation for the next day. We're usually technology advocates and a bit of perfectionists, right? We enjoy presenting a lot. We enjoy giving back to the community. We've recently rebirthed the ACE program after 2 pretty tight and slack years. And I think it's better than ever. It's very easy to enter as an ACE associate. If you're interested about that, you can nominate yourself as an ACE associate. ACE directors have to be nominated by other ACE directors. A very simple program, and it's really about mentorship and giving back to the community. I also co-host a podcast with my fellow ACE director, Liron Amitzi, who recently moved back to Israel. So he used to be in Vancouver. He was 2 hours behind me. Now he's 8 hours ahead of me. So we're going to try to figure out how we're going to ramp up our podcast. We just dropped a new episode, or it is dropping in about an hour. We interview people and talk about everything but tech. In other words, all the skills that you really need to be successful. When I was younger in IT, I thought all I needed to know was how to code, how to write programs or build programs or whatever it is. And that's barely 1/6 to 1/3 of what you really need to be successful in IT, really as a professional. have a listen to our podcast. We've talked to everyone from ourselves, talking about everything from how to write a good resume, how to do a technical interview, how to interview someone technically, to one we just did a few weeks ago where we talked to Dr. Vinton Cerf, who, if you don't know who Vint Cerf is, he set up the first 2 nodes on the internet before it was the internet. And we talked to him about how he deals with hearing loss. I'm not kidding. We're not talking about code or tech. We really aren't, right? Great fun time. It's a conversation. If you get a chance, have a listen. But enough about that. Let's talk about a major trend. If you're in Europe, if you're in the Middle East, if you're just about anywhere, but not so much yet in the United States, electric vehicles are coming. The Ford F-150 Lightning, which, by the way, doesn't have a hood, it has a front trunk. You can power your house for 2.5 days off of the batteries in a Ford F-150 Lightning. They received 200,000 orders. They haven't built one of them yet. They haven't delivered one of them yet. You know, some prototypes, but that's about it. GM, Honda, everybody, Kia, Hyundai, excuse me, are all in the EV market. Other things that are starting to happen, right? A lot of Li-ion battery technology, of course, is still online. Solid state battery technology is coming shortly, and that's going to expand ranges dramatically. Also, there are huge changes, immense opportunities happening as a result of this, right? Electricity demand is likely to double. No, some estimates are as much as 4 times more electricity will need to be generated, right? And by the way, we're not going to probably be able to do that just with solar energy and wind energy. We're probably going to have to, unless we get fusion, like tomorrow, we're probably going to have to look at other forms of energy, even things like nuclear on a smaller scale. But there's going to be a lot of changes. What are going to happen to gas stations? Are they becoming charging stations? Surprisingly, many of them are, believe it or not. Oh, and here's one other thing. Among one of the many shakes to the marketplace, here in the United States, at least, our federal highway system and state highway system is funded by taxes on gasoline. Or local government's going to fund road upkeep, right? We haven't really thought all of this through, but the main point is this is like a good meteor, right? It's like a meteor coming, but it's going to bring many, many good things. Well, one of the things to understand about this too is there's some new terminology. We're not going to be talking about miles per gallon. We're going to be talking about miles of range per hour. So there's 3 basic types of chargers right now, level 1, 2, and 3. If you have a vehicle, if you buy an EV and you have it in your own home, you're most likely going to have a level 2 charger, because a level 1 charger basically is only good for trickle charging, right? But if you go to your local food store, you go to your local supermarket, you go to, your local Home Depot, whatever you have, wherever you might be. It's interesting. I was talking with a family member who recently was working for the city of Chicago doing permitting. He's now working for Walgreens, which here in the United States and most of North America, if you don't know, is a large, basically drugstore. It used to be just drugstores. Now it's everything. I'm like, why are you working for them? He goes, they want to start getting permitting for level 3 chargers. Think about it. You go to your local pharmacy, maybe you stop in, you got to wait for your prescription. At least here in the US, you do, maybe 10, 15 minutes, right? Maybe you need to get something quick, some groceries. You can get 3 to 20 miles of range per minute by plugging into a DCFC or a level 3 supercharger. Forbes has got a great little summary, by the way, of how all this works. So what? Well, here's how it applies to me. I'm looking at buying an electric vehicle. I have a home in the outskirts of Chicago, and I have this little cabin. You can see here's my route north to my cabin. Please don't show up without an invite, up in South Central Wisconsin. So in my case, if I need to drive there and I forgot to charge my vehicle, it's about a 2-hour drive, 120 miles. Most EVs have 200 to 240 mile range. In theory, I could do that on one charge. Not a problem. right? There are several towns, including one rather interestingly named Economawalk, or as they call it up there, 5 O's, that actually has several fast chargers. And that's great. So I have no issues with that. But let's say that I've just gotten to my cabin and I get a call from my nephew who says, your sister, my dear sister, my only sibling still alive, who's about 13 years my senior, she's not doing so well. You might want to get here. Well, she's 4 hours away, 3.5 to 4.5 hours away. If I didn't get a chance to charge my vehicle, I might actually have to reroute just to get to a charger. That's how things are today here, at least in the US. In Europe, even in Middle East, parts of Africa, it's certainly in Asia, things are improving. But just think about this, right? Yeah, great. Let's all go EV. Where's the nearest charger? Where's the fastest charger close by? So that brings us to, well, let's talk about how would we find them, map them, locate them, decide where to put them. I'm going to talk about Spatial Studio, and I'm also going to talk about Apex, native map regions, okay? And I'm going to basically model that same problem. Where are the chargers now? Where should we put chargers? And finally, based on what? Maybe based on traffic volume, okay? That's the model I'm going to use today. So if I'm attack this with Spatial Studio, as I'm going to show you, it's really a no-code environment. I access it via a GUI. I'll share that with you in just a second. If I don't have geocoding capabilities, in other words, if I got data that doesn't have a latitude or longitude, I can do it right inside Spatial Studio. Is it flexible? Well, the solutions that are there are pretty flexible right now, and more will probably be added. But if I need more, and I'll demonstrate this as well, I might consider Apex. Now, is Apex a no-code solution? No. Is it a low-code solution? Oh, yeah. Plenty of sample applications. You can learn Apex as you go. You do not need to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's very easy to learn. And I'm speaking as a Power Builder developer for many, many years before I became a DBA. And now I'm more into the application development space. I love using Apex. How good is Apex? Larry Ellison mentioned it Monday on an earnings call, talking about how they're going to revolutionize Cerner and build applications in 1/4 of the time. Ironically, Larry said, Apex is a new application tool. Mr. Ellison, we're on version 22. Okay, we've moved quite a bit. It's not brand new. It's been around for 20 years in various forms, right? It also has marvelous spatial techniques that you can use with the native map region, but you can also more easily or more customizably add in things like batch geocoding via third-party utilities. And it's virtually boundless in what you can do. So let's go take a look. How are we gonna do these things? Let's take a look at Spatial Studio first as a solution. So one of the things about it is it's incredibly simple to set up. Even I could set it up in a matter of hours. No, minutes, and I'll show you that in just a second. The interfaces themselves are very intuitive, very easy to use. I'll show you that. And truly, it is no code. Now, do you need to have data in tables ahead of time? No. If you have them already, wunderbar. You can certainly leverage them immediately. So let's take a look at how hard it is to do this. What I can do is, if I have an Oracle Cloud account, yes, you need to be inside the Oracle Cloud infrastructure to make this work. But I think I'm one version behind here, slightly. If you go to the Oracle Cloud Marketplace, this is exactly the steps I took to do this. You can simply read the usage instructions. By the way, excellent documentation. Oh, look at this. $0 per hour to use it. Free. Something I never thought I would hear about Oracle technology. But yeah, it's included for no additional charge. you have to supply some information. In this case, I already have an Oracle Cloud account. I have a pretty robust autonomous database environment. Hey, I'm a DBA and an applications developer, as well as an Apex development environment, right? I can document some of the things here where I want to save it. If you know a little bit about OCI, I say, here's the compartment I want it to live in. And then check this out. There's a few other things I need to supply. I can specify the SSL port. The default is 4040, but I could change that if I wanted to. I have some availability to specify what the name of the admin user is for Spatial Studio as well. Once I supply all this stuff, and it's a pretty good sized checklist, check this out. Oracle automatically kicks off a remote job. And literally in less than 2 minutes, I have an instance. This is called the compute instance that has Spatial Studio all ready to go. Literally 2 minutes, I think maybe 2.5 if I stretch it a bit to get this all set up. And by the way, this is something I love about the new Oracle Cloud Marketplace. I don't have to build a compute instance and then figure out what to install. The new Cloud Marketplace has got some awesome stuff. If you haven't checked it out, there are dozens, if not hundreds of options there. So not just Spatial Studio, all kinds of neat stuff. Now, when I was doing this, I actually made a mistake. I put whoops, sorry about that. Close that for just a second. There we go. I put my Spatial Studio metadata repository in the admin account. And that wasn't where I wanted it. I wanted it in the account, or I should say the user account, or if you will, schema named WTFC. And so as a result, I had to recreate it. The good news is it's extremely easy to do, right? Normally this would be handled during the initial installation. But again, I didn't really realize that I could place it in a different place. So I had to rebuild it. I'm just sharing with you how easy this is to do. I picked my autonomous transaction processing 19C database. I upload its security wallet, which has all the security information inside there. I specify the appropriate schema name, which is WTFC, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Charlie, which stands for, in case you haven't guessed, where's the fastest charger? I also specify its schema password and the connection type. I want to use the fastest connection to do this. Spatial Studio comes in and says, okay, great. I've recreated the repository. You ready to get to work? I am. Let's go start analyzing and mapping. So I'm going to come over to my Spatial Studio environment, which is right here. By the way, if I come over here and show all the projects I have, notice there's one I've already built called Charging Points Analyses. What I also built was a list of different data sources. What are these? Well, simplest, a table inside a particular schema. It could also be a totally different data source that doesn't yet have a table underneath it. Ultimately, Spatial Studio is going to build a table in my schema so I can go ahead and use it. But back to my project for a minute. Let's open this guy up. What have I got here? Well, first off, it's a map of the state of Wisconsin. Yeah, hey there. There it is right there, right? Notice that I've put in here 3 different mapping components. One, by the way, is County Boundaries 24K. That's actually a GeoJSON data source. It's what outlines all the counties in the state of Wisconsin, all 72 counties, I think it is, right? I also have a list of existing purple dot and potential green triangle, or if you're red, green, colorblind, triangle. Remember, 1 out of 5 people is red, green, colorblind. So different icons works very well. And I can actually, by the way, drill down into this map, see exactly where everything is located. By the way, notice that in some cases, it looks like the potential location and the charger stations, the existing charger stations, are in the same place. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I can build a map very, very quickly. Don't believe me? Watch this. Here's all my different data sources that I've picked so far. I'm going to build real quickly a new map. And I'm going to just say, dear Oracle, build me a new map. Done. That's all I need to do. What I'm going to do now is come back to my data, and I'm going to build, are you ready for this? I'm going to build an analysis. So I'm just going to take this guy here, traffic volumes filtered, and you know how I'm going to add them to the map? Like that. And because this is an analysis, I'm going to have to zoom in on the great state of Wisconsin to see that a little bit better. And what have I got here? Well, I did a little bit of head work. These are traffic points in the city of Milwaukee and in the city of, if I scroll over a bit more, the beautiful city of Madison, or as people in Wisconsin like to say, Madison, 220,000 people surrounded by reality. Yeah, there's parts of Wisconsin that's, shall we say, scarlet red, okay, and rather conservative. These points are traffic points where there's at least 150,000 cars going past every day. How did I get that? I got the data from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, added in those different latitude and longitudes that actually came with that, and now I've got a mapping source immediately, okay? What I can also do, here's something interesting. Let me delete that layer out, and we'll just do this real quickly. I'll build an analysis. Check this out. I'm going to create a new analysis. And what I'm going to do is say, would you please, dear Oracle, return shapes within a specified distance of another? Notice what I'm showing here. I'm going to call this closest things, right? I'm going to name this analysis. The layer I'm going to filter is actually the traffic volumes filtered layer, which is that one I just showed you, the points that I had on the map. And now I'm going to say, please add in all potential locations. Yeah, but I'm not done yet. Show me all potential locations that are, whoop, there we go, 500 meters, or I could also do 1 kilometer. I don't know whether there's kilometer and kilometre in there, but yeah, I can do this. Watch what happens. Oracle's going to take that and build a new analysis. And now I can just copy that result right in here. And what you're actually seeing is the intersection, my friends, of charging points closest to all of those particular hotspots. That's pretty cool. Oh, you know what? I really don't like this particular icon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change its icon to something else. How about what it really is? You ready for this? I'm going to change it to a charging station. How do you like that? And we'll leave it green because, well, if you see green, right, it's electrical, right? We could change it to any other color if we wanted to, right? We could change it to, I don't know, it'll kill you if you touch this, that kind of color if we wanted to. Folks, that's all there is to using Spatial Studio. This is amazing. Oh, don't like this graph? Okay, delete it. It was removed from my project and I'm back to where I started from. Could this be any simpler? My point is no, not really. I already showed you this, except notice that my county boundaries are a little darker. Yeah, I can also adjust the opacity of a particular county boundary of a GeoJSON layer if I wanted to. I can change, as I showed you, the different points on the map. Super easy to do. But let's say I get in an Excel spreadsheet of a bunch of information, and it has no geocoding information. Remember, to plot anything on the surface of the Earth, you must have a longitude and a latitude. That's non-negotiable, okay? So in this case, let's assume I got an Excel spreadsheet of all the other potential chargers in the Midwest, everything except Wisconsin. And they sent it to me in an Excel spreadsheet, and they forgot to give me the longitude and latitude. Watch this. I'm actually playing this back as a video right now because it does take a little bit more time than I would normally share with you. I get the data. Remember, this is coming in from an Excel spreadsheet, folks. And I'm looking through it and go, oh, you know what? No, zip code really should be a string, right? So that I can do things like filtering, like show me everything that's 606 versus 617, space. And the L2 charger indicator was for some reason classified as a number. I changed the character. The next thing is Spatial Studio says, well, great. What would you like to name the underlying table? I can name it anything. I just called it other charging stations. Notice that data set name. Think of that like a friendly name, right? You may have a DBA. If you have a DBA, you know what DBA stands for, don't bother asking, who has a bunch of standards on how you have to name tables. They have to start with T underscore. Well, great. In here, you can use the table name at whatever you want, right? But change it to other charging stations. Note when that finished loading, Spatial Studio said, well, that's really nice, but did you see there was a little warning key there? Yeah, one of the things the Spatial Studio wants you to have is a primary key value, so we can identify everything on the map. So if I go in here and I try to now geocode those addresses, in other words, take whatever geographic attributes I have and make them get a longitude and latitude, it's going to go, you got to tell me what column should be the primary key. Don't have one? Create your own. CS underscore ID, charging stations ID. Okay, what do you think this does? It just adds a sequence, right? A dumb number onto the table itself. And now I can go in and attempt to do geocoding. Now notice there's still that little warning. Yeah, I haven't finished geocoding it yet. So Spatial Studio is going, well, this is a nice Excel spreadsheet that's now a table, but I can't do anything with it yet. So now let's geocode it. And so it comes back, and you might notice that it's already picked columns like zip, city, state, street address. By the way, what country are you in? Oh, I don't have a column that says country. So pick one. I picked the United States. And by the way, dear Spatial Studio, would you mind making two columns called latitude and longitude and save them inside my table? Do I have to? No, because by default, most spatial stuff that we do in Oracle uses something called SDO underscore geometry, that data type, which can store all kinds of things up to n-dimensional geographic, or really spatial, truly spatial things, even in 4 or 5 dimensions in certain cases. Okay, let me pull that back, 4 dimensions, okay, including time. But you get the idea here. Oracle Spatial Studio went out and said, okay, let me go look them up. By the way, this is not inexpensive to do with Google Maps. You can get charged if you exceed a certain number of requests with your Google developer account. You will get charged for that if you exceed a certain level. This, by the way, notice it did it in batches. How many in a batch? I don't know, and I don't care. It picks whatever batch size that's appropriate to the size of the request. And now I have completely geocoded information. If I want to add those into my existing map, all I got to do, I already showed you using traffic volumes filter, right? I could use that new data set that I just created. I just showed you this already, SDO within distance. Note, my friends, there are several different things that you can filter based on, and there are many other spatial operations, too many to talk about right here, including some advanced analytics. By the way, note this one at the very bottom. Oh, I don't want to filter by latitude, longitudes, whatever. Just filter by some other non-spatial rule. Remember I said I had 150,000 traffic, traffic points, crossings for 150,000 or above? That's how I built it. I just applied a filter that said, look at a column called traffic volume in a table, and it was 150,000 or higher. I built at separate traffic volumes filtered data sets so I could use it. And I already showed you here how I did this particular example, except here I use traffic volumes and existing charging stations. So in this case, notice I used a slightly different color, but I still use that charging symbol as well. Oh, and there's other things you can do too. For example, in the text rendering, I could also say, hey, for text here, there's a column in my table called TV traffic volume underscore location that tells me exactly where this is located. And I can make that so that when the thing is displayed on the map, it tells me exactly what that particular location is. This is pretty sophisticated. Have I written any code? Last time I checked, no. What if you are already using Apex? What if you want to leverage the power of Apex to do many different things? Here's just a couple of examples. Spatial Studio is great. Don't get me wrong, right? It's perfect for everything we're talking about here. What if I need to dive in deeper? What if I need to do some deeper analysis, maybe using some code that I've already written to do some machine learning to build a model for where we should put new chargers? Well, maybe I want to build a mobile capable app that has a whole bunch of different capabilities. Maybe I want to do all of these things, and I'm okay with Apex. I can use it. It's not that hard. So do it. Go ahead, start coding. I'll go get the requirements. No, seriously. It's very easy to use. Now, Apex version 21.1 offers a new native map region. Prior to this, less than a year ago, there were two different ways you could do this. There was a Google Maps plugin, and there was a geographic option that Oracle had built. This is new. This is only about 9 months old. You have 5 different types of layers that you can build, from everything from points, lines, polygons. I'm going to show you heat maps as well as points today. The background maps, by the way, are essentially identical to what I showed you already in Spatial Studio, right? Fully interactive features. I'll share some of those with you because, of course, I'm going to demonstrate that. You can use long lat. You can use SDO geometry if you wish, or as I'm going to, kind of like I already shared with you earlier, GeoJSON objects, right? Which could be a set of polygons, like, county boundaries. We're using the same spatial features. Remember, if you notice that there was one there called, when we were doing our analysis in Spatial Studio, SDO distance. Those same options are available via PL SQL inside Apex. You can get data from any source, a table, a SQL query against a table, REST-enabled SQL, or REST data sources. And unlike Google Maps, you don't need an API key. And again, like I said, that stuff starts to get expensive. How hard is this to do? I'm inside Apex environment, my application builder. I pick a map region. I add it to a new page. I say where I want it to be in the navigation hierarchy, if I so desire. And then Oracle says, Apex says, give me a target table. In this case, I'm picking charger stations. Oh, I remember this. Same schema, folks. Yeah, I'm using Apex and Spatial Studio against the same data in the same schema. Nothing to stop me from doing that. And notice here, Oracle said, well, that's really nice. Do you want to use SDO geometry column if it exists, or do you just want to use longe and latitude, right? Oh, and by the way, check this out. I didn't use it, but I did some experiments with this last year. By default, Apex says, would you like a faceted search page? If you're an Apex developer, you know what that is. That was new in, don't quote me, I think 21, Apex version 21. That basically says, hey, I'm going to look at the columns that you specify. And let's say that you wanted to search for everything on Archer Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, that has a zip code that starts with 6063 something. You could actually type that in on faceted search and it would isolate just those data and filter them. In this case, I'm not going to use faceted search. Some homework for you if you want to go look that up. And here is yet another way I could do it with a SQL query, right? Ultimately, I end up with a map region with multiple layers. So I can build multiple layers based on multiple queries and do some really cool stuff. And I have numerous options for modes. By the way, notice I can pick a separate mode for, or I should say mapping mode, right? I can have a dark mode as well as a standard mode, right? Some people like dark, right? Some people don't. I also have innumerable, well, not infinite, but some really cool options here. In fact, let me share with you how I built this one. I'm going to go open up this example. What I did here is, remember that query against charger stations? I just took the defaults. Let me show you how hard this was. I'm going to go log into my application right here. I would love to extend my session. Thank you very much. Let me just get this guy out of the way. There we go. That's better. And here's my application. I'm going to log in. Remember, WTFC stands for where's the fine charger? Paste in my password. I'm going to log in. Here's my little application. Here's that fine chargers map. Look at that. It even zoomed immediately. It zoomed immediately to where I was. What's not to like? Oh, here's another cool thing. If I wanted to, it should be interesting. Let's see what it does. I'm going to pick my current location. I am right now exactly where this shows you, which is I'm in Sandy Heights in Utah, outside of Salt Lake City. I can turn that back off and go back to where I started from. Yeah, by the way, what happens when you log in that way, Oracle goes, yeah, that's really nice. Do I have permission to know your current location? That's pretty cool. I can zoom in with zoom buttons. I can change the orientation if I want to, if I wanted to change my bearing. There's all kinds of cool stuff here. This is like working right within Google Maps, folks, if you've worked with this, right? That's pretty cool, but that's not all. Check this out. I'm going to go back to my slides here for just a second. This is what's called a heat map. Huh? You can do that? Oh, yeah. By the way, you can also do that in Spatial Studio. I just don't have an example of it right here. Let me go back to my slides for just a minute. What I did is I took a table that I had and wrote a query against it and built a new page. And notice that here's one way I could write this query, right? Give me a latitude and longitude. I want you to capture the ID of the traffic volume site, which is just a dumb number that I assigned to it, its volume, its location, which is the longer description, and which county it's in from this particular table. Notice I'm saying only for these two counties, and just show me the first 25, top 25 rows based on traffic volume. So this is one way I could have done this, right? The actual query that I use does not filter on columns, or nor does it filter on the first 25. I just show all of them. Again, I could pick a longitude and latitude, or if I had a column of type SGO geometry, I could use it. In this case, I'm using longitude and latitude. And notice one other thing, color value column, TV volume. I wonder what that's all about. This is what it's all about. So depending on the higher the number, I picked a color scheme that says the more traffic past a particular point, a brighter red. The less traffic, towards lighter green, right? That's that kind of traditional, how would you put it, weather map coding, right? And by the way, this is a kind of typical, if you live in Illinois or in the Midwest, you know, every weekend, all the fibs, I stands for Illinois. I'll let you figure out what F and B stands for. All them guys coming up to Wisconsin and to their cabins and whatever else and jamming up traffic and, oh, I don't know, paying taxes in their locality and bringing more business to. it's a friendly rivalry between Wisconsinites and Illinoisans, right? And I know several of my fellow neighbors put the annoy in Illinois, right? So yeah, there's a reason they're called fibs. But my point is, and I do have one, I can drill in here and look, oh, okay, there's some particular hotspots. One of the other cool things is I can change the intensity to whatever I want it to be. Some Apex native map region comes with a way to highlight them differently. Remember, 1 out of 5 people have some degree of color blindness. Maybe what I want to do is use a different cross hatching or some other iconization to show higher versus lower traffic intensity, right? We should start thinking about people that have difficulty with vision and so forth, right? Very easy to handle that. You could also load your own color scheme. That's an advanced topic that we don't have time for today. So there's another thing you can do, heat maps. And by the way, I can also do this inside Spatial Studio. I just didn't show you that example. So let's talk about solving a real business problem. Remember my problem that started this whole thing? I need to get to some place where there's a fast charger because my sister is deathly ill. That hasn't happened yet, and I hope it doesn't happen, right? But if I need to get there, I need to know where the chargers are. Well, how about planning for putting the chargers where they're not? So in this diagram, the red map points are high traffic volume. The blue or triangles are existing chargers. The green flag icons are where potential chargers could exist, right? Now, where should I put them? Well, let's put them within 1 kilometer of a traffic hotspot. Wait a minute. What if there's a charger already 1 kilometer away or half a mile away or whatever we decide? Does it make sense to put one right there inside that blue box? Maybe not. Maybe not. However, how about this one down here, almost towards the bottom of the map? That has no charging station nearby. That'd be a great target. Great. I've got my potential chargers table. I've got all my data for that. I've got my existing charger station. And guess what? Whoever sent me the data, this is a typical data science challenge, right? Sent me duplicate data. How am I going to deduplicate it? There are some really great, I'm not going to spend extra time on this. There are some really great SDO features that you can use that says, hey, would you show me any locations, potential locations that are close to existing stations within 100 meters, right? Something's within 100 meters, more likely than not, it's probably the same thing. What this was sent back to me was a list of row IDs from the charger stations and the potential locations table and saved it in a table called deduplicated locations. When I join it together, here's what I get out. And check this out. See that red box at the bottom? We're not comparing address to address, Oshkosh to Oshkosh, zip code to zip code, comparing GIS based on their locations on the surface of the earth. Are they within 100 meters of each other? And when you look at these, the only thing that's really different in a couple of those, did you notice, is zip code. Well, how can that be wrong? Because some idiot who's got 2 thumbs and doesn't know how to find right zip codes, this guy right here, I put in the wrong zip code when I was coding up the potential locations. So I actually ended up introducing some duplicated data, right? Now, in your case, of course, it would never be you. It would be somebody else that's into the bad data. But now I have a way to basically say, include in my final list my existing charging stations and also my non-duplicated charging potential charging locations. Notice I added for this particular table called Charger Universe, I built a new table called Charger Universe that has an SDO index. And I created a spatial index, as it's called, on the geolocation column, which, by the way, is of type SDO geometry. By having that, when I insert rows from charger stations and from potential locations wherever they're not duplicated, that's what PL type not equal D means. Now I've got an accurate universe from which to make my decisions. And here's what I built. This is inside Apex, 3 layers, right? 1, traffic hotspots. 2, existing charging stations. 3, potential charging stations that are within particular range of a traffic location that doesn't already or hasn't already been served by a charger, an existing charger. And one of the cool things, and I'll demonstrate this for you right now, is the ability to say, well, that's great. If we do it for 150,000 traffic counts, that's wonderful. I got an idea. What if I want to go and get a little bit more aggressive and find more and more things here? Well, I was able to use some spatial machine learning techniques to actually do that. I'm not going to show you the code, but I'm going to show you even better how it works. So here is this same map region that I was showing you called best potential chargers. I'm going to change this value to 15,000. Let's go now, let's go 25,000. 25,000. So show me all traffic points where there's at least 25,000 cars going by in a day. And also show me all potential charging stations that I should probably invest in to satisfy that. Notice there's a whole bunch of red marks there and a whole bunch of existing chargers, of course, right? Because those are there. But also, let's take a look at just this one here. This is in a town just north of me, right? These guys here, right here, there's a charging station here, but it's not within 1 kilometer, not so much this traffic point, but of this traffic point. There's no charging station within 1 kilometer. This would be a good potential location. Well, okay, let's ramp it up a bit. What if we go to, I don't know, 155,000? Okay, you're being too generous. We just don't have that much money here in the state of Wisconsin. So if I just type that in, hit enter, what's happening behind the scenes, by the way, is I'm basically redoing this map layer underneath everything. And notice there's a heck of a lot fewer, or should be a heck of a lot fewer, there we go, green flags, and a heck of a lot fewer map points. Did I have to write some code to do this? Oh, yeah. Did I have to learn about spatial techniques and spatial or SDO geometry, data types, and everything else? Oh, yeah. Is it completely customized? You better believe it. But it's not Spatial Studio. So I had to write some code. Okay. It's not trivial. You really do have to spend some time with this. But on the other hand, it's ultimately incredibly customizable for whatever you have right now. And if you already have an Apex environment, then you should be taking a look at native map region because it's really awesome. And again, the main reason I'm interested in mapping is because I got tired of my dad getting lost in the city of Chicago, where it didn't matter who you were or what, where you came from or what your income level is. You were probably going to leave without your car. Okay. You were going to walk home, which was even more dangerous. Okay. That was many years ago. That was almost 50 years ago. But still, I'll always love to know where I am as a result, right? Some other things I'm working on. I want to build this out next year. I want to start thinking about, hey, great, there's an L2 charger nearby. Do we need an L3 charger there? Right? Because there was a differentiator there, right? Got to tell you this, big news story broke New York Times not even a week ago. Companies are looking at electric vehicle trucks, okay? So they're actually looking at that. Where should we put those? My first guess would be truck stops. And actually several truck stops are already looking at that. One other thing, the Build Back Better plan, which again, that bill didn't get passed, but recently the Biden administration here in the US passed the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, they actually, as part of it, they kept part of Build Back Better that said there's a feature called Justice 40, which says that, dear states, if you would like to get federal funding for electric vehicle charging, you must make sure that the lowest 40% based on income in your state, that those people are served as well. Otherwise, guess where the EV charger is going to go? Where the rich people are, golf courses, country clubs. No. One of the plans is possibly to fund a charger every 50 miles on every major interstate, U.S. interstate. Well, where should those go? Maybe near gas stations, right? People are stepping there, or maybe near a Walgreens, as I was saying. Anyway, some documentation that might help on Spatial Studio. Some great documentation here. I spent a lot of time reading through the documentation, but again, you can dive into Spatial Studio very simply. You don't even have to know about tables. You don't have to know about primary keys or SDO geometry. I showed you that, right? But these guides were very helpful. Oh, one other thing, there is the ability to use what are called CZML files, cesium. It's an open source mapping platform. I try to find a good example of that, but haven't been able to find one that was sufficient for this. Those are also supported for Spatial Studio as an input format. And then finally, for native map regions, Karsten Sarsky did a really great native map region article in Aura World about 6 months ago, just after it was released. There's also pretty good documentation. I think Karsten's article is a little better, but to dive into this, to really understand what you're doing with mapping, that's some of my suggestions there for documentation. And here's some public data sources, some that I actually used. Remember I mentioned the 40% thing, right? The 40% ratio. We want to make sure the bottom 40% are served. I have to pull US tax information to actually figure that out, to know where the poorest people are in the state of Wisconsin, okay? And by the way, interestingly, it's the northernmost part of the state where our Native American tribes live. They have the lowest income in Wisconsin, not so-called inner city Milwaukee, surprisingly. Some other great little documents here. Have a look at this. If you live in the US, take a look at it, because it's coming. There's no question about it. So anyway, that's all I had. Let me take a look at the Q&A and see if anybody has. There are no answers. Everybody, all questions are answered. Okay, wow, you guys have been busy. You've been answering questions.
David's been busy while you've been talking, so he's answered a couple.
David, thank you.
Yeah, I had a couple, just really about the difference between Apex and Spatial. I know we've got to get a move on, but I am interested in knowing, if you had to choose, if you're setting out from scratch, what should your DevOps team use, Apex or Spatial? What would your advice be, Uncle Jim?
Oh, well, thank you. As in most things Oracle, generally it depends. If you're trying to build a full-featured app that would allow you to take it on the road mobile, and that's one of your requirements, I would lean 51%, 49% towards Apex. Okay, that would be my gut. If you've already got Apex talent in-house, you could certainly start with the native map region very easily. If, on the other hand, you're a citizen data scientist who doesn't know the difference between SQL and Java and Python, I would tend to lean much more towards Spatial Studio. The good news here, Roger, in my opinion, is everything you learn in Spatial Studio is transferable, that knowledge, to Apex. Because underneath the covers, guess what? They're using the same concepts, the same coding, SDO geometry, data types, right? You want to get into more advanced stuff. Again, I see some of the questions are really amazing here, right? In terms of like, what's the base map? What type of projections that is. Okay, now you're starting to get into some really advanced stuff, right? Or if you want to do like an inertial guidance system, okay, we may have to have a debate on that. But I would say it depends on your expertise already with Apex and your comfort level of writing code. right? It's easy to implement in Apex if you can write SQL, right? It's very simple to do. Heck, you don't even need to write SQL. You can just point it at a table and say, pick these columns. But if you want to completely avoid code, a true no-code solution, I would seriously go with Spatial Studio. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. As well, I've got one more question from you from Ala Harif. Is can Spatial Studio
Yes.
work offline?
That's a good question. Not sure
Yeah, maybe
what
I
we
can handle that
specifically mean.
if you want, Jim.
Yeah, David, please.
Sorry. Yeah.
Please,
so this is
go.
David Lapp. I'm the product manager for Spatial Studio and working a lot with Jim. And Jim, that was great session end to end. And just quickly on the offline thing, yes, Spatial Studio can work offline. However, by default, there are some default dependencies, for example, on the source for base maps and for the source service for geocoding that would be sort of repointed at local sources for whatever the mobile sort of the mobile computing is that's being carried around. So for example, we run Spatial Studio on edge infrastructure that's like, some computing that's on a ship somewhere that's completely disconnected and so forth. So
Right.
so the answer is yes, but with some configuration.
Brilliant.
So to kind of focus back in on that, David, that would be really great. Like if, there's these apps where you can download city maps for a city you're going to, right? And because you may not have online access when you get to, like if you land in Amsterdam or Oslo, Norway, right? You may not have internet service, for example, right? So that would be a really great way you could do it too, right?
Yeah,
something like
that. There's a bunch of scenarios for that, but the main point is that it is doable, but it definitely requires some reconfiguring from the default.
All right. I'm going to have to actually stop the panel now, unfortunately, because we need to move on. Jim, thank you very much. That was really good, and I know it's easy because I've played with it a bit myself, but you make it look especially easy. I'm very grateful for your participation today. What a great way to start our day. So thank you so much, Uncle Jim. Anybody with additional questions for Jim, please just post them. We will get them to Jim as needed.